Dark shit.
I don't.
You call me out of job straight away. What?
Why do you keep doing that?
Ever wonder how ghost hunting equipment works? I'm Becky. Me and my team, Russ, Rachel and Chris from IFLScience, are going to Chillingham Castle, Britain's most haunted historic castle, to see if any of these pieces of ghost hunting equipment actually work. Welcome to Spooky Season with IFLScience.
Chillingham Castle is located in Northumberland, along England's northeastern coast. It was originally built as a fortress in the 13th century and later became home to the Grey family and their descendants.
Over the centuries, Chillingham has witnessed its fair share of bloody events. Given its proximity to the English-Scottish border, the castle was among the main defences against Scottish raids and was a base for English forces, who apparently tortured Scottish prisoners over the centuries.
The castle is currently owned by Sir Humphrey Wakefield, whose wife is a descendant of the Grey family. In 1982, before he bought the building, Wakefield consulted a psychic who, after visiting the castle, allegedly stated that the site was packed with troubled souls, far, far too many to deal with. The psychic allegedly urged Wakefield on no account buy this castle.
As you can imagine, there are many tales of ghosts at this castle. There's the most famous ghost called the Blue Boy, whose skeleton was supposedly found within the walls of a room during renovation. According to various accounts, the Blue Boy is responsible for producing flashing lights seen above visitors' beds when they're trying to sleep.
Then there's the story of the ghost in the still room, where there is an enigmatic portrait of Chillingham's Spanish witch. This entity is said to be a potentially malevolent force that will curse anyone who steals from the property or wishes it harm. Chillingham is now known as apparently the most haunted castle in the country, so it's the perfect location to test out some of the gadgets ghost hunters use when they are chasing spooks.
Our night started at 10 PM, with our group being regaled with local ghost stories by a self-proclaimed ghost hunter who works at the castle. So, as we gathered by an open log fire that cast dancing shadows across the wall, we were introduced to the types of ghosts and spirits other visitors have apparently encountered. The same ghosts and spirits that were waiting to greet us in the dark. Although this process of providing an overview of the castle's ghosts could be seen as a way for us to prepare for our investigation, it also provided a form of psychological priming. This is a situation where our subconscious can be influenced by the stories we are being told, making it more likely we will perceive otherwise neutral phenomena or stimuli as evidence of ghosts or cause our imaginations to play up.
What was that?
What do you mean, what was that?
Did you not hear that?
Still, armed with this information, we set off for our first haunted room, the so-called torture chamber. This room is decorated with various iconic torture devices, but despite its appearance, it isn't actually the site of the original torture chamber, which is supposedly located somewhere else in the castle and is closed off. In this space, as we stood in complete darkness, we were given the chance to experiment with dowsing rods. When it comes to dowsing rods, you may have the image of someone holding two L-shaped instruments while they search for water, and you would be correct. These old tools were used from the mid-5th century onwards for this purpose. However, they are also part of the ghost hunter's toolkit. According to believers, the rods can be configured so they can move in response to questions posed by any surrounding spirits by those holding them. In our investigation, each of our team held rods with luminous tips that were visible in the dark. At the same time, the resident ghost hunter asked for the spirit of John Sage, a former torturer who is supposedly attached to the castle. As you might expect, not a lot happened for some time, but after 10 to 15 minutes, some of the rods started to move, seemingly of their own accord.
John, if you're happy that we're here, you pick somebody you feel closest to, and if possible, you try and cross the roads for me, please. This is what we're looking for. It's our ambition. This is what we'd like to see. At the same time, you can maybe try to show yourself. That would be quite remarkable. Give us signs in the room. At the same time, you could possibly try and move somebody.
Was this John Sage communicating with us? Well, probably not. Despite the popularity within spiritualist and ghost hunting circles, there's no scientific evidence that dowsing rods work as they are said to work, neither for finding ghosts or for finding water. Instead, any movement through the rods can either be created on purpose, by gently tilting your hands, or through something called micro-movement, or the idomotor effect. This is where your body moves without you consciously realising it is doing so. It is the same phenomenon that is at play in other ghostly activities, such as moving a planchette across a Ouija board or even table tipping, two seance favourites. It is likely that this is what causes the rods to move when we're in the dark. Having held the rods for such a long time in an awkward position, and even a subtle clenching of the hands can cause the rods to swing.
Following our antics with the dowsing rods, we relocated to the Edward Room, one of the highest rooms in the castle, where the ghost hunter introduced us to his spirit boxes. These devices scan backwards through AM and FM frequencies at high speeds, usually at ranges between 76 and 108 MHz. According to ghost hunters, these frequencies can be manipulated by spirits and can project their voices so that the living can hear them. Typically, a ghost hunter will ask questions as the device is scanning, and if a ghost is near, it can provide relevant short responses that come out of the surrounding white noise. However, because the device is scanning radio frequencies, it picks up bits of transmission that vary from music to adverts to talk shows. Because it rapidly switches between stations, it only provides brief snippets that come out as one or two words or disjointed phrases. Although believers hold that these words, or at least some of them, could be the utterances of ghosts, it's more likely they are just words from radios. If, however, the words appear to be specifically relevant to a question, then they could easily be a coincidence or the outcome of pareidolia, the tendency for humans to hear meaningful words in random noise.
So how many spirits do we have around us in the minstrel's hall right now? Do any of you remember my name? Oh, yes! I hope you've got that recorded.
I did, but I heard Jeff.
An example of this was evident among our Scooby Gang. At one point, the spirit box apparently answered Simon when the ghost hunter asked if anyone was there.
Any spirits present who would like to come through? Such as Michael the priest, Ethan, Aidan, Godric, Edith, Dougal.
But while he was satisfied that this was what he heard, other people in our party thought the device had said Spider-Man. This suggests that our beliefs may influence what we think we hear.
Throughout our experiment with the spirit box, we also use an electromagnetic field or EMF meter. This device is used to monitor for changes in the surrounding electromagnetic environment. For ghost hunters, random spikes in electromagnetic activity could indicate the presence of spirits or other paranormal phenomena, or, as the skeptics believe, electrical wiring. To use an EMF meter, a person typically just wanders around with it in front of them. If it detects a change in the electromagnetic field, it will register it on the screen or through an easily visible LED lights. However, these devices are extremely sensitive, and simply waving them in a place with any modern technology present will set them off. Even our ghost hunter expert warned us that our mobile phones could trigger the detector, but when we removed them from the room, there was little unexpected EMF activity present.
What's the plan? Is there a single season?
Once we finished in the Edward room, we moved on to the last space for our haunted experience, the castle's chapel. This space is apparently associated with some demonic entity summoned by Aleister Crowley, the famous 20th century occultist, who allegedly stayed in the castle. Once again, the spirit boxes came out, but we were also introduced to the powers of the crystal pendulum.
I'm back. Are we alright to continue, please? Lovely.
Like dowsing rods, crystal pendulums are a favourite tool among spiritualists and ghost hunters who are seeking communication with the dead. They typically consist of a weighted object, such as a stone or mineral crystal, fixed to a chain. People will hold the end of the chain and allow the weighted end to dangle freely. They then ask any supernatural entities to move the crystal in response to their questions. When we tried to communicate with the supposed demonic entity in the room, we noticed the person in charge of the pendulum was put in another awkward position as they tried to keep the crystal steady. As with the dowsing rods before, although the pendulum remained still for a long time, it did eventually start to move as the holder got tired, adjusting their position or fidgeting in their seat. Whilst another member of our team spoke the words heard by the spirit box.
I've just sat here, I saw a dark whatever move.
Tethered. On.
Tethered, we like that.
Firstly,
What's that one?
However, if the demonic presence was really trying to communicate with us, it was not doing so in any coherent way. Any movement from the pendulum seemed to convey contradictory answers to the ghost hunter's questions, or simply did not make sense. But then again, perhaps that was the aim all along.
We also placed a recorder in the room and asked it questions. Ghost hunters suggest that if there are ghost presence at the time, that when the recorder is replayed, you'll be able to hear the responses. What did we hear? Well, we heard something, but we were not convinced it was a ghost. It's more likely to have been background noise.
Are there any spirits in this room that would like to speak to us? If there are spirits in this room, what are your names? Is there anything you can tell us about this castle? Do you have any messages for anyone in this room?
All in all, our visit to Chillingham Castle was exciting, if uneventful. While most of us were sceptical when we arrived, some of us were still unsettled by the dark and the various ways our minds could play tricks on us. However, we didn't experience anything we could describe as unusual, abnormal, and certainly not paranormal. There most certainly were things that went bump in the night while we conducted our ghost hunt and then slept in the castle, but what else can you expect from an ancient building during a dramatic storm? If you want to see any more of our spooky adventures, then we also have videos on the science of seances, an interview with Chris French, and we delve into what happens to our bodies when we are frightened. Yes, we really did lock our colleagues in a dungeon. Happy spooky season.